We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled, your home for all things MCU. We are in what's going to be a rare lull between new content right now, so we thought we would take this opportunity to continue our journey along the first 3 phases of the MCU since we did start the show right as Phase 4 was getting into gear. So that means that where we are right now in the timeline, we are at Ant-Man and the Wasp. We are getting close to Infinity War and Endgame, and it's taken us a couple years to get here as we've done it off and on in between different pieces of new content, but here we are. We are very excited to talk about this one. We're going to talk about our reactions to the film and also how it, calls back on other things and how it foreshadowed things to come. So, without further ado, I'm going to send it over to Kate and she's going to kick off the episode.
This one always throws me off only because I never am like, yes, let me watch Ant-Man and the Wasp. And not because it's bad. I just never think about it. I'm not like that into Ant-Man. This one also came out at a really weird time because Ragnarok already happened. We were riding the highs of that. Then that end credit scene led us right into the idea of Infinity War. But this movie's in there too. I don't remember if I watched this in timeline order exactly when it was coming. I don't know how this came out. I don't remember seeing this until after Infinity War.
Let me clarify. So I had to Google because I was also confused because I was like, there's no way that we watched Ant-Man and the Wasp, saw this end credit, and didn't freak out. Yeah. And I was like, that's weird that they would have given away essentially the ending of Infinity War. I looked at it, it actually came out in between. For whatever reason, I always think that the only thing that came out between Infinity War and Endgame is Captain Marvel because she was the only new character being introduced. But Ant-Man and the Wasp actually came out in July of 2018, which was just a few months after we all saw Infinity War. So if you think about it, that makes a lot of sense because we would have all just seen the dusting. We're freaking out about the dusting, and then Ant-Man and the Wasp comes out, and we are seeing that. And essentially, what it's showing is they're actually probably happening at roughly the same time, which is crazy to think about, but also not gonna lie, watching the end credit scene was so incredibly triggering. And then when they added the question mark to Ant-Man and the Wasp will return, I was like, oh, this is taking me back to 2018 levels of stress. And yeah, great movie, but yeah, it is a little weird when you think about it, watching a timeline versus watching release order.
Okay, that makes so much more sense. And keep in mind, guys, at this point in the rewatch or the replay, we were actively going to the theater for these.
Yeah.
Once we hit Age of Ultron, I was actively going to every single one of these Marvel movies. Was I going crazy the first night? Not necessarily, but I'm still going to every single one of them. So I think maybe that's why it's starting to get a little weird for me when you do them in timeline order. As a fan that watched it in release order, I just can't get behind the timeline order right here. It doesn't make sense because this movie threw me off. I'm sitting here why am I watching them get dusted? Although I knew that was the end credit because I was like, we haven't done Infinity War yet. This is very strange to me.
Yeah, it is super weird. And it comes down to like one of those things where like if you're technically doing the timeline order, you actually have to break out some of the end credits into almost like their own segment. So it's like part 1, part 1A, part 2, part 2A, and like you actually have to do them as their own little mini like vignettes, because there's another one and I want to say it's something to do with the like leading into the twins in Age of Ultron, where that one is like misleading in terms of like order where that comes out and like the film that that's attached to, and I forget which one it is.
The twins come in at the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, so I feel like there's something there too where it's like that end credit scene belongs like way back in the timeline versus, I don't know that that's the one, but there are other end credits where you have to like go back.
Oh,
because
sure.
They're like referring to things that either happened in the past or happened in the future, and you're like, oh, but this doesn't make sense because they are seeding things to come and they're hinting.
Well, and that definitely, like, I mean, there's one, it's the one actually straight from Civil War, and it's Bucky when Steve has his arm in the like metal compressor or whatever.
Yes.
I don't remember what movie that's in the back of.
Isn't it Age of Ultron?
Oh, maybe.
Maybe that's why I'm thinking Age of Ultron is like weird.
Yeah, because I was like, the twins are from the Winter Soldier. That's an end credit there. Maybe that's it, but it is almost an exact clip from Civil War.
Yeah.
And like, I think at the time it was different to be able to do that stuff because it made more sense in the sense that it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So fans were not like overthinking it. They were like, oh, what does this mean? What does this mean?
Yeah.
Versus now, like, you have so much lore.
Yeah.
That like going back, and also you have a lot of retconning. Let's not forget, like, Black Widow technically exists in this. And like, if we were actually doing this correct, we would be doing Black Widow. But we covered Black Widow as part of Phase 4.
Well, no. It's weird. I'm looking at the actual like timeline from Marvel, and they don't have Black Widow on here. No, they do. They have it between Civil War and Black Panther. Because don't forget, between Civil War and Infinity War is when they're on the run.
No, I know. My point being, though, is like we'd technically be doing that movie during the replay, not when we're doing it.
Yes,
that we'd be doing it.
Yes,
that's why I was like, if you really want to go back, like that's the correct way to do this.
Yeah,
obviously we're not going to do that. First and foremost, we covered that movie as a podcast. It was our first movie we covered.
Yeah,
so like, no, we're not going to do it again. But also, again, as far as I'm concerned, call me an old timer at this point, but I'm like, but Black Widow doesn't belong in phases 1 through 3. It didn't come out there.
Yeah. It's definitely like a weird thing, and that's especially such a strange movie because it is so far back. Like the same thing with Captain Marvel. Like we did Captain Marvel like literally as like the first movie. Or second movie, sorry, because the first Avenger takes place in the 40s. We did that as the second movie. In release order, that came out right after this one, or a few months after this one.
Oh, I remember, because we all were like, we don't care.
Yeah.
You just got rid of all of our characters, which is why I don't remember Ant-Man and the Wasp, I think, because I don't even think I went to the theaters for that one. I won't lie. I have a gut feeling I waited for that to come out, or I like pirated it. I'm not going to lie about that. I don't remember seeing it in theaters.
I was interning that summer. I do have a feeling I saw it, but I don't remember the actual experience. Like, I remember the experience of going to see Captain Marvel. I remember the experience of obviously Infinity War and Endgame. But to your point, like, that's such a weird time because I think everything, like, Ragnarok is special because Ragnarok is special. Like, that is, like, truly a top tier film when it comes to the MCU. But, like, when you think about everything that comes out around the Infinity War and Endgame timeline, like, they're so overshadowed by those two films because of the just size and like how much meaning those two films have, that it's like, oh, like, because this is a really good film. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I was laughing. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it set up a lot of really good stuff. I was glad we got to revisit Ghost ahead of Thunderbolts.
Me too.
I was like, oh, I did not even remember like this much about her at all. So now I got to see her backstory and I'm going into that so much better informed. So that's amazing. Like, it was like, wow, this is so convenient. But also it's just a really, really good film. And it's definitely a bummer that, you know, it does get overshadowed just because of the way or timing in which it came out.
I agree. I honestly, as I was watching it, I was like, I do enjoy this. I also found myself being upset, not to get too far ahead of, like, obviously the point is for us to watch this movie and kind of talk about it. But I found myself upset because I sat here and I was like, ooh. Then they brought out Quantumania.
That was in the back of my mind the whole time.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it too, like I feel like we said this about the first Ant-Man. We were like, wow, this was a really good film. Like, it's genuinely enjoyable. It's totally very different from basically everything else in the MCU. And I think that's obviously because they're leaning into Paul Rudd and his chops, but not overly so. Like, it's still extremely entertaining and it's a really good film to watch. And then you come into this one, you're like, wow, they managed to make a sequel that was as good as the first. It told a really good story. It expanded upon the lore. You got new characters. Amazing.
Yeah.
And then it even sets up Quantumania really, really well. You're like, we've gotten to explore more of the quantum realm. And now Janet is back. And like, obviously, that's a huge piece of Quantumania. And then you got to Quantumania and it was a total disaster. And I was like, dang, like they really were close to going 3 for 3 and they just like fell off on the back third.
Yes. But I will say this is another, I don't know if I would say it's a character, although you might be able to argue it. It's at least another storyline that gets sucked into Infinity War and Endgame. And by remembering that those films are in the middle, I think that really shifts the narrative and shifts where these characters go. Like they foreshadow Cassie, which was fine. I had no problem with that. And like now watching it back, I was like, oh, ha.
Yeah.
Like she obviously ends up taking a suit and she's a member of their little like trio when they go into the quantum realm. Problem is, and I know we said this when we watched Quantumania, I have no connection to grown up Cassie.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Because she was a victim of the time jump, which is fine. And like there are probably going to be other young Avengers that we've talked about the possibility of that happening. But the thing is like you've created a relationship with me and young Cassie. The girl who played her was great. She was great in the first movie. She was great in the second movie. And I'm not saying like whatever. I don't think the actress was old enough or whatever that situation was because she shouldn't have been in any way, shape, or form by the time Endgame. Like she would have been like what 2-3 years older. Like she wouldn't have been.
Well,
old
no, they
enough
filmed
to
them
play.
together.
Well, that's what I mean. So like by the time she was doing this movie, she would have had maybe 2 years on the age she was in Ant-Man 2.
Yeah.
So she would have never been old enough to play current Cassie. It just would not have worked. But because this movie gets sucked into those two movies, I think, and those characters, I think you lose them. And then I just think you lost the plot. Like, I think Quantumania went off the rails in a direction even they didn't know where they were going with it. And it is sad because Ant-Man is not an inherently grounded character if you think about it. Like, if you really want to talk about it, the quantum realm and all that crap, I mean, I don't even want to go back into it because I remember doing all that for Quantumania. It hurt my brain.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lot of levels to that. That's not grounded. Like, at the end of the day, you're no super soldier, bro. You're going into a whole other, like, I hate to use the word dimension because that has all sorts of layers to it. But like you're going into a whole other realm essentially. That also has layers. You know what? It doesn't really matter what I say. But I think these movies did a good job at making these really, really crazy scientific ideas and these intense realms or dimensions or whatever you want to call them seem easy because you did ground the character. Plus, you grounded him in Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he was just out there trading blows with other people. The only person out there that was really quite mystical was Wanda.
Yeah.
And then Vision, but he's a robot. Like, that was essentially the extent of it. Then Quantumania happens, and I just think you go so far from what you showed of Ant-Man this far that you lost the plot.
Well, and I think too, like, and I don't want to make this too much about Quantumania, so this is the last thing I'll say, but I think what's great about the first two Ant-Man films is, yes, they are part of the larger MCU and all of that, but they did a really good job of being just connected enough that you were like, all right, I see how this is part of the larger universe. Or to your point, like Ant-Man 1 gets him ready for Civil War because he meets the Falcon and all of that, and that's, it helps, but it's not like overly like trying so hard to move the overarching narrative forward. And I think that's where they really stumbled in the third film, is they made that film was supposed to be like a really important bedrock to the multiverse. I mean, you introduced the guy who was supposed to be the big bad in that film, and I just don't know that Ant-Man was necessarily the right guy to do it. I don't think any one singular hero is the right person to introduce the big bad. It should be, you don't have to, but it should be in a larger team-up film. Thanos introduced in the Avengers, not in Cap's singular movie or in Thor's singular movie. No, it was in an Avengers film that then that team went on to fight and eventually defeat him in Infinity War and Endgame. So like I just feel like they put way too much on one character who was maybe not, especially that character was not the right character to do that because of the tone and the way that they've kept it so separate in the first two films.
Yeah, and by rewatching the second one, I think it kind of confirms that for the third one.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I lose this film in a lot of the rewatches in general, like whatever I rewatch. Because one, not an Ant-Man girly, like I'm not that into the character. Two, it's not a bad film. It's not my favorite. I don't think it's the most well done. Like, you can't touch, in my opinion, Ragnarok. You can't touch Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. A lot of people agree with that, but that's my opinion.
I was gonna say, there are a few that we all kind of universally agree.
Yeah. Is it bad? No, it's not anywhere in the bottom. I mean, if we're going off like just phase 1 through 3, it's not even in the bottom like third.
Yeah.
It's in that middle section.
Yeah.
It's a good film. I just don't go back to watch it. So I did enjoy going back because it's well done. I found myself chuckling. I found myself not feeling like I had to look too hard for certain things because they made it obvious. Now that you especially have like hindsight bias, you can sit there and be like, oh, okay, the quantum realm. And to your point, her mom and all the stuff that comes out of that. Because when they go to the quantum realm, obviously Janet had like a whole life there.
Yeah.
Like she lived an entire life while in there. And that comes to fruition in the third movie, which was something I thought they did really well.
Agreed.
That was something I'll give Quantumania. You know, you do have Cassie. You do have the reoccurring characters you had in the first movie that helped drive the plot. You have the repercussions of the bigger stories you've told. So Civil War, this entire movie was based off the fact he was under house arrest.
Yeah.
From Civil War. And Hank and Hope were out here on the run because their tech was part of all that. Like, that is the basis of this entire movie, and it works.
Yeah.
So I really did enjoy it. I thought it was a really well done movie. I liked being able to watch it back. And like I said, nothing was like, oh, Easter egg there, Easter egg there. No, like once you know it now, it's all right there.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's dive into a little bit about the film itself and what we liked and didn't like. Though we've kind of touched on it, I think we can say, you know, this is probably the end of kind of the solid Ant-Man films. Then we get into Quantumania, and that's a whole nother beast. But we did like Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think, to your point, I liked that they were able to bring back, you know, the side characters too. Obviously, his friend Luis and all those guys from XCon, their security company. I think those guys are great. They're a great supporting cast. They are perfect for moments of levity, but it's not too much. It managed to find a really good balance between being funny and then making itself a joke, which obviously we had challenges with, especially Thor 4 and things like that. So I loved that. And the last thing I'll say about Quantumania that I thought was really, you know, a stark difference from this second movie, having watched it back, is I think we're missing that supporting cast in Quantumania. Obviously, it's so much more about the Lang, Van Dyne, Pym family, but you know, it's so much about that group of four and obviously Kang. But like then you're missing all of those guys that kind of ground the film and bring it down to that almost street level and make it more realistic and honestly a little more fun. And I think that was definitely something that, having watched the second one back, I really was like, wow, that was a piece that I really missed in Quantumania.
Yeah, because it's not that, and I would never say Paul Rudd is not funny, but it's not like he's not funny in this movie. Or, you know, even, I don't remember her name, but the woman who plays Hope.
Evangeline Lilly.
Yes. It's not as if she doesn't have a good dry humor sometimes too, or Hank, or all, like, they all bring comedy, but the comedic relief is his group of three friends that are kind of come in at the most random times. And that's kind of the point, I think. And it does bring that lighter layer to some of the really superhero-y things that start to happen, or like I said, the really scientific stuff that just starts to run away sometimes. Like, I had to laugh even when Detective or Agent Wu, at this point, I don't know, he's detective, he's agent, he plays a lot of different roles, and I enjoy him as a through line. But when he's trying to explain to Cassie like what his dad did, and he starts going into this whole other thing, and even the joke is like, you're really good with kids, aren't you? Like, you're really good with this.
The eyes are glazing over.
Yeah, right? That's how I feel sometimes when they describe some of this quantum stuff, because first off, I never even took physics, guys. So I don't even have like a base level to understand all that crap. But like they start going into it and it's like, okay, I don't necessarily need to understand it fully for the movie, but then you do have his little group of 3 that come in and like you're like, listen, these guys are just a bunch of idiots and they're making the best out of being ex-cons. And I appreciate that. Like that is what I need to kind of ground me back to the fact that like there are regular people in this movie that are not shrinking or getting large. There's not a bunch of scientists. Like Hank and Hope and Janet, incredibly smart, and I would never take that from them. They live in their own halo sometimes in these movies, and so you do need, like, across from them, those other 3. You do.
I love that Scott is like the middle person because he also, like, I think one thing that gets lost about Scott that I wish I remembered in my own head a little bit more is like he too was like a security engineer. Like they kind of gloss over that a little bit
That's
in
how
the
he ends
first
up in
film.
jail, yeah.
Yeah, but like he is like also really intelligent. But it's funny because like you can tell where his area of just like general like scientific or mathematical expertise ends and they start to go into, you know, quantum physics, which like is a very specialized form of science. So you can tell like he's this perfect like middle person because he is this intelligent engineer who is a good foil to like his 3 lovable goofball friends who we enjoy very much, and he can hang with the Pym Van Dyne family to a certain point, but then he's like, roll it back and speak to me like I am 5 because while I get you to mile 5, I cannot meet you at mile 26.2, friends. So like I need you to roll it back.
Yeah, which I think also helps with the comedy, and I think it's easier to compare to Quantumania because I think the first 2 were so similar.
Yes.
And so I think that was something you also lost, and maybe I'm wrong. It's been, I don't even know, when did we watch Quantumania? That was 2023, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I only asked because I literally can't tell you. So it's been since I walked into that movie theater and I watched that movie since I've seen it. Like I've never bothered to watch it again.
Yeah, same.
I do think I gave Love and Thunder another watch and I felt a little better about it the second time.
I think you watched it with dad. Didn't
I
you say
did.
you watched it
I
with
watched
dad?
it with our father.
Yeah.
So, and I did feel a little better about it watching it a second time. Quantumania never even got that. But because of what I remember from it, I feel like you lost that too. Because Janet is the only one who knows things going on in the quantum realm. This whole society they built, everything with Kang, and then the whole movie is hinged on the fact she won't talk about it. So everybody's like in the dark about crap she did while in the quantum realm. And in the meantime, they're all trying to fight Kang. And Janet has great information she won't share.
Yeah.
Like, I remember that being a huge, I hate that theme.
That trope drives me nuts.
Oh, it's the worst. Like, miscommunication. No. Not communicating at all is the worst. Like,
Yeah,
I just,
yeah.
like, I'm like, really? Like, you just need to talk. And I remember feeling that during the movie. So, like, I think you also take away that aspect then, too, because now you have Hank and Hope, who I don't want to say are completely worthless in their abilities, but they're in a new place too. So they are not as knowledgeable or as grounded in their science as they normally are. So it just like, I think you just took on a whole different look to a lot of these characters and watching this movie and knowing how much, to your point, we liked the first Ant-Man and that it's so similar to it. You just got so far off the track, unfortunately, with all the characters, it seems like.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of characters, I do want to talk about one character in particular that we mentioned at the beginning of the episode because we're going to see her again soon, and that is Ghost. And I actually think that, and also Bill Foster, I want to talk about him too, because one thing I do want to point out, if you listen to our recent What If reactions, I don't know if I said it in the actual episode itself or in one of our like social immediate reactions, but I do want to clarify. It turns out Bill Foster was in fact Giant Man, so that wasn't the What If episode getting that far away. It's just that we never see him be Giant Man. He mentions / hints at it being it when they like were younger and you know Hank was doing his thing because he and Scott compare how large they had gotten as Giant Man. So I just want to, you know, say that really quick. But I did love getting to revisit Ava because I think I would have been honestly a little confused and probably wouldn't have been able to enjoy Thunderbolts quite as much if there was this huge gaping hole in my knowledge around her because I hadn't seen this movie in so long. Everybody else's background is pretty easy to understand. They're either a Black Widow or a super soldier. Am I missing anyone? Oh, or Taskmaster, who's, you know, also enhanced, but in a kind of similar way to
And
a
all of
super
the
soldier.
above catch-all.
Yeah. Enhanced individuals, right? I mean, in some ways, Ghost is also enhanced, just not on purpose. But a lot of the rest of the team is enhanced in similar ways, right? And they all have very straightforward backgrounds. And so I was glad to be able to see, what made her become the way that she is and give her the powers that she has. I think the other thing that I truly did not remember from my original watch was the fact that she was an operative for S.H.I.E.L.D. and they sent her out on assassination missions a la the Winter Soldier. She was essentially S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Winter Soldier. And that blew my mind. And it also makes me really excited to see her again. And I'm way, way more excited for her to be on this roster post watching this film than I was pre watching it.
This is how I know you and I spend our time in very different sides of the internet, because that is something I fully remembered about her, because it was very similar to the Winter Soldier, but also as soon as she was named to the Thunderbolts roster, it made sense because she did all that stuff. Whether or not she was doing it for the name of S.H.I.E.L.D. / low-key Hydra, regardless, because while she was there, that still would have been Hydra. It doesn't really matter. The point of the Thunderbolts is all those people have like red in their ledger, right? Like they're all not Captain America, Mr. Perfect. Although, like, no offense, we know you killed Steve. We know you killed. In all those years you're telling me you didn't, lies. Like, I know you're out here murdering people, but whatever. I'm just saying, like,
Calling
that's kind
him
of that
out.
line, right? They're always like, who crosses the line? And that makes them like a gray kind of character. And I'm like, you're gonna tell me after all those years that Steve not once hit somebody too hard or something and killed them? He just happened to knock them all out? Like, come on. It's a lie. Anyway, I will say, when I saw she was named to the Thunderbolts roster, I thought immediately of that because of, I mean, I was still shocked because she's like a deep cut to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't watch this movie enough. So I was like, holy crap. Like, I didn't think they'd bring her back. I thought there were some other people I think that could have made the roster that didn't, which is fine. It can always grow, it can always change. But I was shocked at hers, but it not because I was shocked at why she was on the team, just because I didn't remember her that much. I like her as a villain because she's sympathetic. And because, listen, and Taylor's gonna relate to this so hard too. As somebody who has a chronic illness,
Yes.
like, obviously I'm not phasing in and out of matter and like it's gonna kill me, but like, I get it. The amount of times I've been just like on the bathroom floor, like crying in pain because of my chronic illness, like, it sucks. So like, I couldn't have probably related to a villain more, especially by the time she was like, I'm literally going to die. I don't care about her mother. Like, I actually have to say, I found her cause more important than bringing back Janet, because I was like, I don't need Janet. I just learned about Janet. I don't care. I relate to. And like, this is life saving for you. Janet's been in the quantum realm for 9 million years. She's having the time of her life, we learn in Quantumania. She was doing all sorts of stuff. So, like, listen, let her keep partying in Quantumania and doing whatever she's doing, or in the quantum realm, and let's save Ava. Like, that was honestly, like, I was like, I am aligned with you. I get it. I fully feel your feelings.
It is interesting. I never, having watched it, I did not think about it through the lens of like a chronic illness. But then when you said that, I was like, wait a minute. Yes, because she has this line where she's, and I shouldn't laugh because it's really sad actually. But
That's
she has this
called
line
our
where
trauma over our chronic illnesses.
yeah. But she like has this line where she's saying, literally, I am always in pain. Like, I wake up in pain, I go to sleep in pain, I'm always in pain. And like, that's not necessarily my experience with chronic illness, but I will say, when my chronic illness is in a bad place, because knock on wood, you guys can't hear the knocking, but I've been in a pretty okay spot for a while. But when I'm not, it is just constant pain. And so I was like, when you said that, it makes a lot of sense. And to your point, I liked what you were saying about her being a sympathetic villain. Like, she didn't choose to have this happen to her. It's not like she was, I'm going to use this term loosely, the mad scientist who was doing the experiments. She was literally his child, and she shouldn't have been in that place, and she shouldn't have had that happen to her, and she had no choice in the matter. And so you feel bad. And then I did like her relationship with Bill because, he came in and truly, I think it showed what a kind and noble character he is, even though he butts heads with Hank, and he's kind of set up to be this foil for Hank. But it's not that he's a foil because he's a bad guy. He's a foil because they just go about things differently. And it's cool because he is so noble and he's such a good guy and he's stuck with her whole life. And then you see too where he butts heads with her because, to what you were hinting at before, like, she's willing to do whatever it takes because her life is on the line, whereas he has maybe the privilege of being able to say, but we need to do it the right way. But that's not always, like, time wasn't necessarily on their side. So I also really liked their relationship. I thought it was really cool to see how it had evolved and then continued to evolve throughout the film. Like, even at the end where he's basically like, no, we're going to go down together. Like, we're going to make it through. It's going to be fine. I just thought that's really, interesting. And I hope that we do get some sort of hint to him or some sort of reference, because I want to understand how that ending led her here, because we know the Thunderbolts are kind of in that gray area. Now she's almost going backwards to kind of what she was doing before for S.H.I.E.L.D., because we don't know exactly what side of the line Valentina's on, nor do we know what side of the line the Thunderbolts are on exactly. So it will be interesting to see, like, what is Bill's perspective on what she is doing now. The right thing, quote unquote, question mark? I don't know.
I think, I hate this, but I think the easiest way to kind of write off the relationship they have is that he got dusted.
Oh, yeah.
And then came back. And not that there hasn't been years since, but she would have had to have found her own way in the 5 years since that has happened and since he was not with her. And if that meant she kind of fell more into that gray area again, I think once that becomes habit too, that's hard. I will say something I was thinking about though, which I'm glad we did rewatch this when we did, because I don't know if I actually really would have rewatched it for the Thunderbolts. Because to be quite fair, like, 3 of them come from the Black Widow movie.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've seen everything Bucky's in 9 million times. That's not of a question. The Falcon and Winter Soldier, I've seen. Like, I know where John came from. I guess I don't think I would have gone out of my way, because honestly, I think I forgot she was in this movie too. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like, I probably wouldn't have even remembered which one to go watch. So, like, that being said, I'm glad we watched it, because I think she was, like, the sore thumb for me that's just stuck out because I didn't know her character the same way. But it kind of raised a question, because Janet came back and she was able to use the energy she had pretty much absorbed in the quantum realm to kind of help her stop phasing and to save her life.
Yeah.
Now, I could be wrong, and maybe clarify this for me. I don't think I'm wrong, because I'm actually pretty sure there's a line that straight up says it. They're getting quantum energy for her when Ant-Man gets stuck in the quantum realm.
Correct.
Okay. So obviously, let's start with, first off, he's there for 5 years. What happens there? If they're getting her quantum energy, like, if it's like medication she essentially needs, did she find another way? Like, let's say Bill didn't, get dusted. Okay, that's possible. But what if he did? Who's there to help her? Because Hank's gone, Janet's gone, Hope's gone. Like, everybody that was supposedly helping her, let's say, get this medication, disappeared for those 5 years. So it's like, what happened there? And then also, I'd like to wonder, like, is she good now?
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. And I was actually just going to ask you the same question. So we're thinking on the same wavelength. I guess there's a couple of opportunities or options to answer that question. I think one thing that is a possibility, and if they don't want to, spend too much time on this question in the Thunderbolts, because there is going to be a lot of happening and there's going to be a lot of other characters and we're going to have to catch up with them and all that stuff. So if they don't want to spend a ton of time, talking about how she is better now or how she survived, it's possible that, like, that wasn't their first trip in. Like, it looked like it was Scott's first trip in the van version, but they could have been using the much larger version and they might have stockpiled it and all that stuff. It did kind of seem like it was the first time because they were showing him how to use the canister, but it's not definitive. So maybe if they wanted to go that route, they could say, oh, well, they had gotten some before and she was able to ration it. Maybe she was dusted. Maybe it wasn't even a problem because she wasn't around.
True.
And for 5 years, she probably felt no pain. So honestly, in a sad, roundabout way, that might have been good for her. And I don't say that to be, like, facetious or anything. I just truly, she might have not felt pain for the first time since she was like 7 years old. I think the other option, to your point, is maybe Bill was helping her out. Maybe she did have to go to the black market. Maybe she had to go to someone like the power broker who has different resources. And maybe that's how Valentina found her. I don't know. I mean, I would like to get that answer, and I do think we will have to get that answer. Maybe that's why she's working for Valentina, because she was told that she could get that energy that she needs. I don't know how it plays into all of that information around, or everything that had happened with the Pym, Van Dyne, Lang family, because if you think about it, like, they actually, one question I do have, and I promise this wraps in, is, and now I've also only seen Quantumania that one time, but isn't it that they don't want Cassie to go in the quantum realm, but yet they sent Scott in for these healing particles, yet they act like it's like such a big deal to go in the quantum realm during Quantumania, and I'm a little confused because they were actually actively sending him in to help Ghost. They never mentioned that that's what he, or how many times he may have done that since he's been back. Are they still in contact? I don't know. We had an entire movie with these characters that then never referenced her once. It does feel super disjointed. And the reason I bring that up is, if she's not getting what she needs from them, maybe she went to someone else.
That's a fair point. And I think that, again, highlights why in the Thunderbolts roster, she sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
Because, again, first off, we were introduced to 3 of those characters in Phase 4.
Yeah.
In one movie. Then you got another one from Phase 4. And then you had another one that's been there since literally, like, the dawn of time. Like, and I say that with, like, literal love in my heart, because obviously I love him, but, like, that's a fact.
Yeah.
If you want to do timeline order, that man was in the very first Marvel movie.
Yeah.
Like, he is in existence forever. He's also a literal fossil. Like, let's not forget. She's the only one we haven't seen. That's why I think she also was just so weird when they named her, because again, I was like, I know you, but like, I'm thrown off that you're here.
Yeah.
And so I think, like, you have to fill in the holes with her, because we didn't just see her. Like, Yelena, we've seen make, what, 3 appearances already?
What was the third one?
I don't know.
Black Widow,
Could be 2.
Hawkeye.
Why, no, why do I feel like she was in a 3rd one?
Was she?
Was she an end credit?
Are you thinking of the Young Avengers end credit? Because that was Kate and Kamala.
No.
Well, she was in the end credit of, no, Black Widow that led into Hawkeye with Valentina.
Maybe she wasn't in a 3rd one. Regardless, though, they continued her story already. She's already been in a 2nd piece. I mean, like, I know all these characters. They're new.
Yeah.
They're fresh. Not from a movie that came out in, what, 2018?
Yeah.
So I do need you to fill in the blanks, especially when the whole thing kind of, her entire ability to phase goes off of this. That's the other question I kind of had, was I was like, well, her phasing, though, is her illness. And like she says, the suit helps her control it, but I'm like, but if you're getting, again, loosely using the word medicine for it, can you like still control it? Like, can you now control it whenever? Like, or are you just now like an operative? Like, have you lost the ability? I can't see that she's lost the ability to phase.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Because I think, I mean, obviously she's a very skilled fighter, and I don't want to take that away at all. But what gives her the edge is her ability to decide when she does or doesn't want to be able to be physically impacted or to make an impact. I do think that there will have to be a few lines from her, you know, just kind of giving us the rundown of, well, blah, 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 and this person fixed it. Or, you know, now I can phase when I want to. Or they added the phasing abilities to the suit and it's not my body. I don't know how that would work. I'm not a scientist, nor do I understand quantum physics. But however they decide to answer that question, she is going to have to give us that answer, because to your point, we know like, it would be one thing if she was new and we were just like, okay, we're going to take this at face value. But we do know why she phases, and we do know like the repercussions of that. So you're going to have to answer the question. Otherwise, it's just going to be like a huge plot hole.
Yeah, and she's the only one that I think I feel that way about. But I was glad watching this movie so I could kind of fill in the holes that I knew were coming.
Yeah.
Because I didn't remember her. But I actually think watching Ant-Man and the Wasp, she was the most interesting part.
Agreed.
And I think moving forward, and okay, hindsight bias again, because we've already seen Quantumania, but like, I think she's still the most important part coming out of that movie. Like, I think she'll do more with the Thunderbolts, in my opinion, than Quantumania did as a whole movie. So I did enjoy it for that. I will say my only complaint was it was a little busy in the like villain department. And now I use it loosely when I talk about the cops, but we do have to see them as an antagonist. They were an antagonist in this film.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't call them a villain, but they were at least one of the antagonists.
They were an obstacle for Scott and company.
Yeah, and like a reoccurring one.
Yeah.
So like it wasn't just like, oh, one obstacle. That's why I would say like no, they take like third place in the antagonist kind of realm. Then you had, as we've already said, Ghost and like loosely Bill Foster. Honestly, I feel like I know more about Bill Foster from What If than I ever would have learned about him in this movie. So,
true.
That's
whatever. Honestly why I forgot he was ever Giant Man.
Well, that's why, honestly, like, I don't know if I just thought he was just so evil in this movie or something, because What If painted him so, like, good all the time that I was like, oh, this must be so far from how he really is. And then, like, that's not true.
No, he's a genuinely good man.
Yeah. He just disagreed with Hank Pym, which seems to be like a regularly occurring thing.
Yeah, well, it's also interesting because he's like one of the few that's like, I don't want to say that like Scott's like morally gray, but like he did what he did. That's why he was in jail. But like Foster is like so just like, I am going to do the right thing. And like, this is the right thing and this is the wrong thing. And I'm going to help people at my own personal risk. And I wanted to point that out because I do think he's like a genuinely good dude.
Yeah, no, I liked him in this movie. So I will say, like, you have them, and they're, like, definitely your main antagonist, and that works. Then you had the really weird subplot that I don't even remember the guy's name, but the weird southern guy.
Sonny Birch, I want to say.
Is it? I don't really understand why he needed to be a reoccurring factor in this, but I found myself, especially, like, the big chase scene towards the end, I was like, why are we doing this? Ghost is enough of a foe on her own. Like, I don't know why you're kind of sidelining her to have this mere human, no offense, with no technology of any sort, like helping them be in this chase. I don't even, you know what it was? His writing was Iron Man villain writing.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was a stupid motive. It was dumb. And the weird thing was you had two other antagonists that made perfect sense. One being the cops because you have literal criminals, like love y'all, but literal criminals.
Yeah.
And the other one being the actual main antagonist, which was perfectly fine to stand on her own.
Yeah.
So like I don't know why you added this Iron Man level villain in here with poor writing, stupid like motives. And he was just there to annoy me. I was like, what are we doing?
It is interesting because I remember that he was in this film only because he actually, that actor whose name is currently escaping me, he recently voiced, I believe that You're Gonna Die because they did the same thing with him. That man who held Kate Bishop on the train.
Oh my God.
I'm like 99% sure he was the voice actor for that. Yeah. And so, yes, same character, literally. And I saw this article that was like, oh, they redeemed this actor. They didn't, but okay.
Where?
I know. It's fine. And again, like maybe that was just like a clickbaity thing because I didn't actually read the article.
Well, but also, where in What If Season 3 was anybody being redeemed?
I know. Nobody found redemption in What If Season 3, let's be honest. Maybe Kahorti. Not that she needed redemption, but only because she got cooler. But anyway, it is interesting because they talked about that, so that was the only reason I remembered he was even in the film. And I remembered then the scene where he tries to double cross her, and then I was like, okay, bye. Like, that was just a scene to introduce Ghost. And then he kept showing up, and I was like, I do not remember this man being in the whole movie.
No.
Why is this man in the whole movie? I am confused.
That's why I was confused, and he just kept showing up.
Yeah.
And he had all these goons and all this stuff. I was like, dude, you're in the wrong person's movie.
Yeah.
Go find Tony. I don't know what to say here, but like, and he wasn't needed.
No.
Like, again, you could have just had Ghost consistently taking the lab back and forth and stuff, and that could have been the whole chase scene 90% of the time, and it would have still worked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, had the police chasing them instead.
Yeah.
And she could have just been interfering. Like, it still would have been fine. Like, I don't really know why he was written into it. So I did find myself thinking that was like my only real complaint, that I was like, why are you here? It's too busy. You're doing too much.
Yeah. No, that is a very fair complaint. I would agree.
Yeah. Otherwise, like, I enjoyed it. I liked rewatching it. I was having fun. I thought it was well done. It kind of was making me sad, though, because I knew where Quantumania went. Like, I knew where these characters went. I knew what it set up.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, this sucks because this is the last one of this that is so good.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, it's almost like there was a part of my brain that was like, I'm actually excited for the next one. And then I would remember what the next one was. And I was like, dang, no.
I know. I'm like, do I give Quantumania like a random night where I'm bored and I don't want to watch something like that I have to think about too hard, do I give it another shot now and like maybe feel differently 2 years later? I don't know.
I don't know.
But at least this movie got me considering it.
You know, and that honestly, moving that needle even a tick on the meter is kind of a big deal because Quantumania, man, I mean, low on the totem pole of the top MCU movies.
It's actually arguably maybe the worst.
I definitely think there are worse ones. I really hated Thor Love and Thunder. Like, I really hated it. And now I haven't seen that one again either. And I hated them for different reasons, but I really hated Love and Thunder.
I hear you. We don't need to get into the debate, but I will just say my only thing with Love and Thunder is at least, like, yes, it went off the rails, but because Ragnarok was already, while perfect, a little off the rails in a good way, it didn't feel like such a stark difference.
Okay, I can see that.
But I think, like, especially now having watched this, I think if I go to turn on Quantumania, and again, these movies all also suffered from having Infinity War and Endgame in the middle of them.
Yeah.
But if I were to turn on Quantumania tonight, which Lord knows I don't need to make my night like that, but if I were, I think I'd feel very differently. Like, I feel like it would just be like such a stark difference to me.
Yeah, especially so close.
Yeah.
Like watching them so close together.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's honestly a very, very valid take. I will allow that. I don't know that it's changed my opinion yet because I'll have to rewatch them both. But I do think that that's something that I could at least consider when thinking about what is the Marvel. Oh, no, I know what my least favorite Marvel movie is of all time. Iron Man 3. Hands down. The least important Marvel movie of all time. No point to it whatsoever.
And that's exactly who that Birch guy reminded me of.
I know.
And Hammer. It was like Hammer and the guy who does Extremis mixed into one dude and just like was annoyingly there the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Iron Man 3, man. Like, literally, other than the Extremis continuing to move forward, there is nothing that film, and we haven't seen it since Shang-Chi, but there is nothing that film brought to the MCU that didn't exist previously. It does not further any plots whatsoever.
It's just there.
And I know we talked about that in the replay. That is like hands down. And then, you know, not Ragnarok, obviously. Love and Thunder and Quantumania can fight for second to last, but I don't think, I mean, Marvel don't take this as a challenge, but I don't think they will ever make a film that is worse than Iron Man 3, in my humble opinion. And I know that saying anything bad about the Iron Man trilogy is like sacrilegious in this fandom, but it is.
But it only is to Iron Man fans because for some weird reason they're like, but it's good. And I'm like, it's not.
But it's not. Like, name to me a consequence of Iron Man 3.
Listen, I will say a good Iron Man fan, this is a challenge maybe to y'all, but the good Iron Man fans that I've ever met can admit that they're not good movies.
Oh, see, I love the first one.
But as a whole, as a trilogy, they're not good.
No.
And like when you do compare them to Cap especially, mainly because that's always the comparison, you guys lose.
Yeah.
Like, it's not. Listen, I'll debate it all day. I know I'm winning. Like, you can't argue
Team
that.
Cat for the win, always.
You can't argue it.
Yeah. All right. Without reigniting this debate in the fandom and recentering ourselves back on Ant-Man and the Wasp, great film. If you haven't seen it in a hot minute, definitely go watch it again, especially knowing that Ghost is going to be in the Thunderbolts coming up in just a few months. Woohoo! So please go rewatch it. 10 out of 10. Recommend. Very enjoyable watch. You won't regret it. Please make sure that you are following on your podcast platform of choice as we look to, continue coverage. We will be getting into some new stuff coming up, so that's super exciting. You can also check out the website. We are in the process of updating the calendar, so very soon that will all be up there for you to take a peek at what is coming up. And last but not least, if you wanted to support the show, we would be eternally grateful. And the opportunity to do so is in our Buy Me a Coffee link, which is in the show notes below.
You guys can also give us a follow on all of our socials, which are linked below in the show notes. And we do have next week off. We're going to take a little bit of a break. And after that, believe it or not, we're doing the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, if that's the name of it. I don't know what the name of it is. Whatever the little cartoon Spider-Man show that I knew was freshman year and it no longer is. We'll be doing predictions for that. Believe it or not, we are doing the first of 2025 new content. So we're excited to see that. We will keep you guys updated on how we will be covering that show as a whole past the predictions episode. So depending on how it comes out, we might be covering it more like how we've been doing our what if episodes and then just doing like a big reactions at the end. Or we might be doing weekly like we do with our typical shows. So we will keep you guys updated on that one. But in the meantime, Go watch some Marvel movies, Marvel shows, catch up if you're behind because Marvel just blew your mind. So let's talk about it.